This is Dr. Serge King bringing you a discussion on Huna called The Power of the Word. I would like to discuss this, showing the power of the Word, what it means, what happens when you put out a firm word that something is going to happen. I'm going to start out with an experience that my wife had. So why don't you tell what happened on your recent trip? Just tell about the things you've been talking about.
Well, I was going to Idaho, and the flight ran into some turbulent weather. And apparently there was a big rainstorm up ahead, so I decided that we didn't need to have turbulence and have an uncomfortable flight. So I programmed the clouds up in front of the airplane and smoothed out the air, and we had a very smooth flight. In arriving in Idaho, it was pouring rain, and I had decided before I left that I wasn't going to take my umbrella and that I wouldn't need it. And so when we landed on the runway, it was pouring rain, but by the time I'd gotten out of the plane and down front of the airport, the rain had stopped, and I did not need my umbrella. And the sun came out very shortly after that, and the weather was perfect the whole trip.
Good, thank you. That kind of thing happens to the people who are using Huna very often. And if one of you others here has an experience similar you'd like to relate as we go along, why, good, let me know. We'll add that in. But this kind of thing happens very often because there is not only the techniques, for instance, of visualization that were probably used in smoothing out the clouds, smoothing out the air. Surely that was used. But it started with a word. It started with a declaration. And it didn't even, not with what is normally called an affirmation. She didn't repeat something over and over again the way people will usually do an affirmation. That's a good technique also. What she did was made a declaration in her mind, something like a decision, a word. That word was, we don't need that turbulence. From that, she went ahead and did what was necessary to erase the turbulence with that full, complete confidence that the word had been stated. The word had gone out, and now all she had to do was follow up on it. And the same thing, when she was about to leave, she said what? She had an impulse to get her umbrella. Most people would take that now as a psychic impulse. I'm getting word, I'm getting information that there's going to be rain and I'm going to need my umbrella, and so I'll pick up my umbrella. And then they would get there and they would find it was raining, and they'd say, oh, wow, isn't that great? I used my psychic ability. And it was great. It was good. But this is the difference with Huna. And this is what she did. She felt the impulse. She got an accurate impulse because it was raining, and it was going to be raining where she got to. But then she declared with her own creativity, knowing that she creates her own reality, and she said, no, I'm not going to need it. She had nothing to base that on except her own will and her own knowledge that that will can produce effects. And so she said, no, I'm not going to need it. And she went there, and there it was, raining and everything like that. And she reminded herself of the word, and by the time it came just at the moment where she was going to step out into it, the rain stopped. Now, you can call that a miracle, and that's fine. We have miracles like that all the time. When the word goes out, in one part of the Bible it says, in the beginning was the Word. And this is in John, the book of John. And that comes from the very first part of the Bible, Genesis, which is the beginning. And some of the first beginning things that are said, what? Before anything is created, there's a word spoken. Let there be light. And let there be a sun and the moon, lights in the heavens. Let there be plants and animals. Let there be. Now, you know, this is the way it's translated, let there be. This, in the English language, in any language, is in something we call the imperative tense. The imperative tense in language means a tense in which you give an order, actually. That's what it is. In which you declare a thing to be so because you have, in a way, commanded it. Now, command scares a lot of people. That's just another word. The thing here is that you have made a definite declaration that something is so. And when that word goes out, you follow it up with all the opportunities and everything else you have to do, but when that word goes out, it becomes manifest. So another way of saying, let there be light, is like this. Light, be. Let there be light is just a nice flowing way of saying that same thing. Okay? Plants and animals, be. Exist. I command it. I order it. I say it. I declare it. However you want to put it. It is an imperative mood or imperative tense that does that. Now, anytime that you say, for instance, yourself, let's have a party. And then you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to plan a party. Just in that kind of a statement, in that kind of a way, you're using this same power. This power is not something that you have to train for 20 years as an adept and undergo all kinds of suffering and privation and discipline to learn how to create with the word. You do it all the time. Just the people who study Huna learn how to do it better. But you do it all the time. Any time that you declare something to be so and you follow it up and make it so, you're using this power of the word. And just because it seems something which is ordinary, well, if I'm going to have a party, all I have to do is go to the store and gather this and do this and send out invites and all this kind of stuff. It seems all very mundane, but you are still creating that whole event. And once you feel the freedom of your creativity, it'll make no difference to you whether you create a party or whether you create a clear day during a rainstorm. What matters is the clarity of your intent, the complete confidence in what you're saying. So when the word goes out, the thing gets done. In some fashion or another. In some fashion or another. We have this thing, called nearest available equivalence. So that when you put out a word, if you don't do anything to follow it up, the universe will give you the equivalent of what you have stated as a fact. But it may not be exactly as you stated it. There may be some differences. Even if you do follow it up, but you've got the slightest amount of doubts or hesitations, why that modifies the result. But when you say it with absolute clarity, with absolute conviction, you get exactly what you said. And every little bit of doubt modifies that result, makes it a little bit different from what you said. And so often you make statements, you say things that you don't really think about. You say, well, this is so or that is so. Those are your words going out. And you say, well, look, in my life, there it is. Well, of course. Well, of course. You stated the word, and there it is. But it goes the other way around. It isn't there, and then you state the word. It's there because you state the word. Because in some part of your mind, that has become a word, crystallized into a belief or a habit. And so it stays manifest in your world. It will stay there until you can say with absolute conviction something different. And when you can do that, then you will produce change at will. The power of the word has been sought for so long in so many places. Among the Hawaiians, Polynesians in general, many ancient peoples, the word had magical properties, magical qualities, because they recognized this fact. When you said the word, why, something happened. And so they're very careful about how they use words. And up around this has grown all kinds of superstitions where people have been afraid to say something or afraid to mention something for fear that it would bring down ill luck or bad luck, something like that. So people have become afraid of saying the word, and that's not the point. You start to get into that kind of mood when you feel powerless. When you feel that the world is out there doing something to you, and you forget that you have the creativity. You can say anything you like. It is your intent while you're saying it that is most important. Not the word itself. The magic isn't in the word, the magic is in your intent. And any word will serve. Any word will serve. In fact, this has given rise to the use of different kinds of chants, which are supposedly words of power. And they do have their own power because, for a number of different reasons. Let's take one. And, of course, this is my interpretation of it. It may not agree with the interpretation that other people will have of it, especially those that use it. But I'm going to give you a interpretation. This is a chant which is known as Namyo Horenge Kyo. A very effective word, or whether it's a series of words, we'll call it a word, which people use to accomplish seeming miracles in their lives. By repeating this word over and over again, they have wonderful things happen to them. They have money come into their life, they get jobs where they didn't have any, they may get a new house, build relationships, have all kinds of things happen by focusing on and repeating this word over and over again, especially if they do it in a group. So what's happening here? Here's a word that doesn't seem to have anything directly to do with the thing they're asking for, like a car or money or whatever else it may be. And yet the repeating of this word, it's not even an affirmation. Because in English terms, the word is meaningless. It's just a sound. It may have a translation, but it's nevertheless just a sound in English, and especially if it's chanted over and over again. Even if we take an English word and do that, you take the word rabbit and repeat that one over and over and over again, 100 or 1,000 times, and it'll become a meaningless sound. Is the power in this word itself, the Namyo Horenge Kyo? No, not really. The power is not in the word, and the power is not in the meaning of the word. The power is in the intent of the person while they are repeating the word. And the power is in the sound of the word insofar as it has an effect of increasing, let's call it mana, bioenergy, and confidence. So, we have a person always going into an altered state when you're doing something like this, repeating this word over and over again while they're focusing on, let's say, a job or a car or money, whatever. The word helps to give them a reference point of focus. It helps to keep them in a framework of thinking about what it is they want. Now, if they just sat there without using a reference word like that and tried to think about money, probably what would happen would be doubts would start entering in, or they'd think about the fact that they didn't have any, or they might start thinking about, well, gee, I've got to get groceries this week, or I've got bills to pay, or their mind would go off and wander someplace. The reference point, the repetition of this word, the more effective, the more they believe in it, of course, the more effective it is. But the reference point of this word helps to keep their concentration on what they want and not on what they don't want. Now, when they get together in a group and they start doing the same thing, then you have all that group energy. Everybody's chanting the same word. There is a kind of a rhythm that builds up. That rhythm in itself affects the individual aura, the individual energy field. It amplifies it. It all builds up, and during this time they're concentrating on what it is they want. Wow, that's very powerful. That can be called the power of the word. But again, the power is in the energy, the emotion, and the intent. You can have either a very clear intent with no doubt, and that'll do it, or you can have a sort of an unclear intent, but with a lot of energy behind it. And that'll plow right through and erase the doubts. So sitting in a group with all of that kind of energy built up will tend to erase the doubts for a lot of people. Now, that's a good word. That isn't the only word, of course. There are others that have been used. Even the one, Om Mani Padme Hum. Okay, that's a nice one too. Usually people think it is simply being done to put oneself in an altered state of consciousness to help relax the body, and it will do that very well. But that same phrase can also be used to build up energy, to focus concentration, to create effects and events. The kahunas naturally had theirs, a number of them. Aumakua Maikapoyola, Wikea Keola. That's one. And another one that can be used is Aumakua Kia Manawa, Aumakua Kia Manawa, Aumakua Kia Manawa, which is kind of nice. Builds up a good rhythm and will have the same effect. But these are other ways of using the word, which is, as I say, not a specific declaration of intent, but is simply a word that focuses concentration. The power of the word. In Huna, we have a couple words for word that give us some insight. One is probably the most common, olelo. That's O-L-E-L-O. And olelo, as I say, is the most common thing used for word. It's built up of primarily two things. Lelo, which means tongue, also language, but basically means tongue. And O, which is a very important code word, that means, or it has connotations of going out and manifesting, of moving outward from a person. The same word that's used in the word, one of the words for thought, mana-o, which means mana, going out. This is olelo, which means word, and it means going out from the tongue. Speaking of word. There isn't a great deal more that can be said about that, except that, as I said, has connotations of manifestation. Okay. Another word that gives us a lot more insight is a word that it forms part of the code roots of the word Huna. This word is Hua, H-U-A. Hua also means word, among many of its meanings. And among many of its meanings is emotion. And the most important of those meanings is seed, offspring, fruitfulness, a very direct statement that the word produces results. It also means result, effect. A very direct statement. It is the word that produces results. And especially because of what's in especially the word combined with emotion. Now, Hua also means unity. And that means to be, where you are united, that means you're a singleness of purpose, singleness of mind. So you get a connotation of complete confidence in there. Your mind is not divided. So when you have good emotion, when you have that clear, single-minded intent, when you speak the word, you're planting a seed. And that seed goes out and produces results. And it's very, very much a part of the whole, even Hawaiian philosophy, not just the Kahuna philosophy. The importance of the effects of the word going out. You can use words, as I said before, it isn't so much the exact words that you use. Some people get caught up on that. It's not so much the exact words you use as the intent behind them. There was a man who wrote a book called The Secret of Perfect Living. And he claimed to have discovered something quite unusual and unique, and that was that there were certain words in the language which you could state, you could simply say these words, and miracles would happen, wonderful things would occur. For instance, according to his research and his discoveries, he would say, like we talked about money earlier, he would say, well, the word find. All you would do would you say this word like you were speaking it to your subconscious, and you would say find, and money would start pouring into it. And we would find other words that would produce a similar effect. And all you'd have to do would be state the word. And sometimes the word didn't seem to have a real direct association with what was being stated, but it worked for him. I experimented with that for quite a while, being naturally interested in anything that's going to have that much effectiveness. What I discovered was that the words, yes, this was a very powerful way to do it. The subconscious will be very much impressed, very much affected by a simple, short word more than it will a long phrase or a long paragraph. Okay? One simple, direct word. You can find a word that triggers off a reaction in you. See, now there's where the key was. This guy used certain kinds of words that worked well for him. The principle was correct. But it was a very subjective thing. You have to find the words that will work for you. For instance, somebody wanting to feel an upsurge of strength and confidence could say the word power. That would go as a message to their subconscious, and whoop, the adrenaline would rise up, and they'd feel this confidence, and they'd increased health, whatever it was. That would be a word that would do that for them. Another person saying that same word, it would scare them into little bitty pieces, because their connotations, their ideas, and associations of the word power would be frightening to them. So that word wouldn't be a good one for them to use as an energizer, okay, to create a kind of an effect. They would have to search in theirs. They might find a word like vitality, or strength, or health, or freedom, or whatever triggered off the kinds of reactions that they wanted. We do, our subconscious, but let's say we do react emotionally and physiologically to words. Actually, we react physiologically to every word we say. There were some studies done that showed that children begin to make very small physical movements in relation to different sounds. And if there's going to be a small physical movement, that's an energy movement is taking place. And depending on the circumstances in which these sounds were first made, and especially with whole words, once a meaning became clear, and sometimes it didn't even have to be that. It was intonation and intent goes forth even where the meaning of the word is not understood. As you know, you can speak to an animal, and the animal doesn't understand the word, but the animal can understand the intent, all right, and can look just as guilty as a little child. There is a physiological response, then, to the sounds we make in our language. Actual muscle movement. An energy response. And then the more we learn full words and associations with these words and the intent that comes across, even telepathically, while we respond to other words. So everybody has a set of words that they respond to depending on the context in which they learn them. That can be changed, but nevertheless there is already that set. You have some positive ones and you have some negative ones. I remember a woman, we were in a meeting, and somebody happened to mention the word snake, and she jumped half a foot out of her chair and screamed. And the person said, all I said was snake, and she jumped half a foot out of her chair and screamed. And her response was so great that we went on, the word was mentioned at least 2 or 3 more times, and she jumped halfway out of her chair and screamed. Each time, same intensity, there was no diminishing. I had a tremendous urge to go up to her and say, snake, 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 snake. But it wasn't appropriate in that situation. Might have helped her, but it wasn't appropriate in that situation. That's kind of an extreme example where one word triggers off. I mean, it didn't even have time to form an image. It's not like she had a memory or anything associated with it. The word itself triggered the response immediately. Now, there are words that trigger in you positive responses and words that probably trigger more or less negative responses. By being more aware of your own self, of the way you respond, you can find out which words these are. You can change your responses to the negative ones, and you can improve and even increase your response to the positive ones. But only by becoming aware of them can you either change them or utilize them more effectively. You want to find, like they call these loaded words sometimes. You want to find the loaded words in your vocabulary. And I don't just mean the words that you use, but the words that are said to you. What are the words that stir you up, that get energy moving, that excite, that enthuse you? These are the ones that you can use and even make into a pattern if you want to. If you don't want to just use one word, you can use 2 or 3 together to really build yourself up, to increase your energy, and to go forth and create. Yes, any word that you say with complete conviction will produce its manifestation. You create your own reality with words. Aloha.